Welcome to Native America Calling. I'm Sean Spruce. The bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki during World War II demonstrated the immense power of the new weapon known as the atomic bomb. The research to build those bombs and the subsequent testing ever since created its own kind of destruction in this country. On the 80th anniversary of the Hiroshima bombing, we'll look at the legacy that nuclear weapons development and research has brought to Native Americans. We'll talk about it right after the news.
This is National Native News. I'm Antonia Gonzalez. A pair of rural counties in eastern Arizona could soon start seeing significant investments in fiber and broadband networks. The funding is part of a multi-state settlement with two national telecommunications companies. KJZZ's Gabriel Pietrazio has more on how it may help some tribal members get connected.
Arizona Attorney General Chris Mays announced that Frontier and Verizon have agreed to spend $8 million across Navajo and Apache counties, home to some of the state's biggest land-based tribes.
I'm never, ever going to stop bird-dogging this for these two counties because they deserve better. Just because you live in a rural county doesn't mean that these telecommunications companies can treat you differently.
For context, tribal lands make up 2/3 of Navajo County, while Apache County has about 70%, containing swaths of the Navajo, Hopi, Zuni, and White Mountain Apache reservations. Latest census data shows that more than half of all residents there are indigenous. The FCC reported in 2020 that almost a fifth of those living on tribal lands lacked access to broadband compared to 4% off-reservation. Part of this tentative settlement requires providers to find and fix the root causes of regular 911 outages on top of conducting a network-wide audit. For National Native News, I'm Gabriel Pietrazio.
Food security, climate change, and increased tension with Russia is top of mind for residents in Alaska's Bering Strait region, and it was one of the topics at the recent Arctic Encounter Conference in Anchorage. Hundreds of people, including politicians, researchers, and indigenous knowledge holders, gathered for the event. Vera Keenacock Metcalf is the executive director of the Eskimo Walrus Commission. She lives in Nome and was born in Savunga, a small village on St. Lawrence Island in the Bering Sea. The community is located closer to Chukotka in eastern Russia than to the U.S., and Metcalf says residents have a lot in common with their neighbors.
Many of our families, relatives, kins originated in Chukotka. So we have this close connection, not just with marine mammals, but people to people.
Metcalf says climate change has real consequences for residents in her region who subsist on mammals migrating through the Bering Strait. A warming Arctic affects those migrations. Unstable ice conditions also make whaling and walrus hunting more dangerous. The geopolitical climate has also been changing, according to panelists who spoke at a session which focused on conflict and cooperation in the region. Russia has been strengthening its relationship with China since invading Ukraine in 2022. As waters stay ice-free longer, that means shipping, fishing, and military activities on the Russian side have been growing as well, and contributing to tension between Russia and the U.S. Captain Steve White is the president of Marine Exchange of Alaska. He says the growth of Russian vessel traffic is noticeable.
We know that traffic is increasing through the Bering Straits, and you can just say, well, just numbers-wise, it's more than doubled in, the last 10 years. The season, the amount of time that vessels are transiting is also increasing.
White says it's important to look at how this increased activity is affecting locals. Historically, the Bering Strait region has been a place of collaboration, according to the Walrus Commission's Metcalf. Russian and American scientists and locals have worked together to protect their marine subsistence resources and exchange cultural knowledge. A lot of that work has come to a halt in recent years, but Metcalf and other speakers say they hope that collaboration returns. I'm Antonia Gonzalez.
National Native News is produced by Koahnic Broadcast Corporation with funding by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Support by AARP. AARP creates and connects people to unique tools and programs, helps conserve personal resources, and tackles issues that matter most to individuals, families, and communities. More at aarp.org.
Support by Sonosky Chambers Law, championing tribal sovereignty and Native American rights since 1976. From opioids litigation to treaty rights to tribal self-governance. With offices in Washington, D.C., New Mexico, California, and Alaska. Sonosky Chambers Law.
Native Voice One, the Native American Radio Network.
This is Native America Calling. I'm Sean Spruce. The huge spending bill just signed by President Donald Trump expands the existing compensation program for people exposed to harmful radiation from nuclear weapons testing and development. The federal government has already paid out $2.7 billion since the original program was instituted in 1990. But those affected need to clear hurdles to be eligible. Today is the 80th anniversary of the atomic bomb explosion over Hiroshima, Japan. 3 days later, another bomb destroyed Nagasaki. Those events signaled the start of a new era for nuclear weapons and energy, which increased health risks for people exposed to radiation that came along with it. We're taking the opportunity now to look at the legacy for Native Americans and others in the 8 decades since. What is your view of the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki now? Share your thoughts by calling 1-800-996-2848, 1-800-996-2848. That number is also 1-800-99-NATIVE. Joining us from Albuquerque, New Mexico is Tina Cordova. She is the co-founder and executive director of the Tularosa Basin Downwinders Consortium. Tina, welcome to Native America Calling. Hello.
Hi, Sean. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Absolutely. Joining us from Syama Village on tribal lands of the Pueblo of Laguna in New Mexico is Loretta Anderson. She is a co-sponsor of the Southwest Uranium Miners Coalition Post 71. She is Laguna Pueblo. Loretta, hello to you as well. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Sean. Thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of this.
Absolutely. And joining us from Santa Clara, New Mexico is Marissa Naranjo. She is an environmental representative board member for Honor Our Pueblo Existence, or HOPE. She is Santa Clara Pueblo. Marissa, you've been on the show before. Welcome back.
Good morning. Thank you, Sean. Happy to be here.
Sengitamo to you as well, Marissa. And Tina, I want to begin with you. Let's talk about what's important about the new extension of the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act. Can you tell us why it was included in the spending bill just enacted?
Well, I don't know that I can answer why it was included. What I can tell you, though, is that I've been working on this for 20 years. Our organization, the Tularosa Basin Downwinders Consortium, or TBDC, has been working on this for 20 years. And for 15 years, we've had bills introduced in Congress. Last year was the first year we ever had a vote on the bill. And in the U.S. Senate, it passed twice. But Speaker Johnson in the House blocked the vote, even though we had the votes. And when Senator Hawley, a Republican from Missouri, joined this effort because he wanted to include zip codes around St. Louis where they dumped nuclear waste during the Manhattan Project, when he joined this effort, it brought life to it because we could never get Republican support. So Senator Hawley was able to negotiate including it in the reconciliation bill. One of the things, though, that I want to make sure everybody understands is that in doing so, he had to reach a compromise that actually left a lot out. It left out places like Guam and Colorado and Montana and all of Arizona and Nevada. And, you know, it also took out the healthcare coverage, which we knew was vitally important to the people of New Mexico. we're glad to be included. We're glad they finally acknowledged our sacrifice and suffering, but the bill certainly does not go far enough. And we're just grateful that we've received this acknowledgement and the door is open, and we're going to continue to go back for all of the things that we believe are left out that are necessary to make us whole.
Tina, let's talk more about the details included in the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act. NPR Online provided a pretty good summary of some of the different benefits, but there's a lot going on here. There are specific benefits for downwinders. There are benefits for uranium workers. A lot of it has to do with when a person was exposed, when they lived in a specific state. Can you give us just kind of a quick summary of what kinds of medical conditions and illnesses can be compensated, and how do people prove that they're connected to a radiation exposure?
Well, the program, the RECA program, has never been based on proof. It's always been based on an assumption that if you lived in a certain area of the United States and you were alive during the time of atomic testing and you had one of the compensable cancers, that it was assumed that that cancer was related to your radiation exposure. So you don't have to prove that it was caused by your exposure. What you have to prove as a downwinder is that you lived in New Mexico, as an example, from 1944, when they first started testing what's called radioactive lanthanum in Los Alamos. You have to prove that you lived in New Mexico for 1 year between 1944 and 1962. 1962 corresponds with the last above ground test that they did in Nevada. So you have to be able to prove that you lived in New Mexico for 1 year during that time frame. You have to be able to prove that you had one of the 19 compensable cancers. And really, those are the two threshold qualifying factors. There's going to be a lot of things left out. We pushed, and in the original bill, they included prostate cancer as an example. Prostate cancer is not one of the 19 current compensable cancers. And so, you know, like I said, there are things that we're going to have to continue to push for. If you meet that criteria, you'll receive $100,000 in a one-time payment of compensation, and people will be able to apply on behalf of deceased loved ones that meet that criteria. And as an example, a mother or a father can apply on behalf of a deceased child. A child can apply on behalf of a deceased mother or father, and also on behalf of deceased grandparents. It's not necessarily a difficult process, but one of the things that is going to be challenging for the people of New Mexico, because this is an 80-year history, is basically finding the documentation that's going to be necessary. And I'll let Loretta speak further because she's an expert on the uranium workers program. And I think it would be most appropriate for her to describe that rather than for me to describe that.
Sure. Loretta, please chime in and educate our listeners with regard to how RECA provides benefits for uranium workers.
Well, like Tina said, we're very thankful for our miners, our downwinders to finally be eligible, our post-71, and New Mexico to be eligible for compensation. It's been a long fight. I've been doing this for over 11 years now, and it's been a whirlwind of effort. It's been a lot of work, highs and lows, very much disappointment, but we're so grateful right now that our post-71 uranium miners are eligible. And in order to be eligible, the current bill goes from January 1st, 1942 to December 31st, 1990. In order to qualify, a uranium miner must be a mill worker, ore transporter, surface miner, or uranium miner. They also included core drillers and remediation workers. So that's a plus. you do have to have a qualifying condition as far as medical, and that is we have seven qualifying conditions: silicosis, pulmonary fibrosis, fibrosis of the lungs, cor pulmonale, lung cancer, renal failure, or renal cancer. These are the qualifying conditions in order to apply for for compensation. You have to have worked at least 1 year, also from January 1942 to December 31st, 1990. And our uranium miners will also be eligible from the Department of Labor for home health care. So that's another plus. And there's the total compensation that a uranium miner would be eligible would be $400,000.
$400,000.
So, like I said, we're so grateful for this to be finally our miners to be recognized.
Now, Loretta, I know a lot of these miners, they work there at the open pit uranium mine, the Jackpile mine there near Pewaukee Village in Laguna Pueblo. Do you have any idea of approximately how many Laguna tribal citizens could potentially be eligible for this compensation?
Well, right now, throughout our community, the majority of people I'm working with worked at the Jackpile mines, and I'm working right now with over 600 people. These are the ones that are living, and also at least over 200 of the deceased. And not only did we have the Jackpile mine at one time the largest open pit mine in the world, we also have had numerous mines in the Cebolleta, Bibo area. And there was about 4 of them there, and this is just our little area here in the Laguna, Acoma, and the tribal land grants. So there's quite a few people that are miners that are going to be eligible. And
okay.
The one thing I do want to state is that you do have to qualify. You do not automatically receive compensation just because you worked at the mines.
All right, Loretta, I'm sorry, we have to take a short break. We're going to come back. We'll continue our conversation, and the phone lines are open for folks who would like to join us. 1-800-99-NATIVE. President Trump wants to change public school lessons to reflect a more patriotic message. That concerns Native teachers and other education advocates who wonder what that means when it comes to the well-documented history of mistreatment of Native people throughout history. As the new school year begins, we'll get an outline of what might be ahead. That's on the next Native America Calling.
My name is Tammy, and I'm a member of the Little Traverse Bay Band of Odawa Indians. Smoking gave me heart disease. I used to think of cigarette smoking as something that only affected me. Then at just 44 years old, I had to look into my mom's eyes on the way into emergency heart surgery and tell her, "Mommy, I promise I won't make you bury me." My tip is, think about the people in your life who love you. They go through the pain too, maybe even more than you do.
The people you love are worth quitting for. You can quit. For free help, call 1-800-QUIT-NOW. A message from the CDC.
You're listening to Native America Calling. Today is the 80th anniversary of the bombing of Hiroshima, Japan. We're talking about the legacy of nuclear weapons development and testing in and near Native communities. Did uranium mining or bomb testing take place near your community? Just call us. Let us know. 1-800-996-2848. That's also 1-800-99-NATIVE. Our first 2 guests, Tina Cordova with the Tularosa Basin Downwinders Consortium and Loretta Anderson with the Southwest Uranium Miners Coalition Post 71 are on the line now. And Tina, listening to you and Loretta describe just some of the details of the compensation packages that are available to folks who qualify for this RECA compensation, Jesus, this seems like a lot of details. Are there any other hurdles or issues that people might encounter that we need to discuss here?
Well, I think that, there's going to be hurdles, but one of the things I think is most important to express at this point is that we have seen a lot of scams develop. I mean, I don't think we could have adequately prepared for that. And I'm working with the Attorney General's office and all of our congressional delegation because, and Loretta can speak about this also, I have people calling me daily, many people calling me daily. And what they're telling me is that these organizations are soliciting them, contacting them and telling them, we can file a claim on your behalf, we guarantee results, and we'll take 6% of the claim. What's crazy about this is that the claim, the fee for filing on behalf of somebody is capped at 2%. But if you file a claim that's rejected, then they can increase the fee to 10%. And right now, the claims process hasn't even started. So if somebody files a claim on your behalf today, it's going to be rejected. Okay. And then if in the future they file a successful claim, they can now withhold, and they will, the check goes to them, they'll withhold their 10% or whatever they're claiming to be able to do, and then they'll eventually draft you a check. We have to make sure people know, do not get involved with any of these organizations. Help is on its way. The congressional delegation is working as we speak to set up constituent service representatives that will help people file claims. Loretta and I are working on a training so that we can get volunteers trained to go into communities all across New Mexico. And I'm just asking people, please be patient just a little bit longer, and soon we'll be able to assist people in filing their claims.
All right, Tina, thank you. Loretta, I want to get your insights with regard to these scams that we're talking about, but we've got a caller on the line who I want to take first. Let's hear from this person. They are in Albuquerque, New Mexico. They're listening on KUNM radio, and I understand they're a former jackpile mine worker. Hello, you're on the air.
Hi, how you guys doing today?
We're doing really well. Interested in hearing your insights.
Yes, I know Loretta well. I know Larry Wanico and Arlene Jeremiah, and talked with them about the compensation in the past. There's some of the issues that are in those conditions for medical reimbursement that are never listed on what they have. And it's what I had talked to Larry Wanico about is he told me, you need to go fight it. I still need to take the test. I still need to do my paperwork on that. But I think they need to open up a little bit more, a brighter field of medical conditions that radiation exposure has caused to our health out there. I'm not going to say exactly what had happened to me, but I do also have cancer. I just found out here not too long ago. And but there's other things that need to be taken care of. And I'm glad we have people like you, Loretta, and Larry, and everybody else that's out there fighting for us. Gome and Husteme, thank you.
All right, really appreciate you calling in and sharing your insights, brother. Loretta, please respond to our caller. Sounds like he knows you pretty well.
Dawa, thank you so much. Yes, it would be nice to add other medical issues because there's so many diseases that our people throughout the area are receiving, but the Department of Justice, the government has only stipulated these qualifications right now. And like Tina said, we are going to continue to fight to add these qualifications and the years and all that we feel was stripped from the bill. And just to let you all know that through this, what I'm doing is I'm working with our people throughout the community to get tested. We have the UNM Reset program that I've been working with for years, and the Minor Colfax mobile unit, and working with them to see if we can get them tested because uranium miners do need to have a B read in order to qualify. So if you need to call me, I'm telling people, call me so I can lead you in the right direction. You know, it's so disheartening right now. When the bill was passed here in our community, every week we're having 3-4 meetings in the Grants area, especially in the Grants area, and they're these home health cares. These attorneys are telling people, file. You don't need to get tested. You don't need to do this or that. We have so much confusion here in our area. It is so disheartening, and the chaos is just. I just can't not believe how terrible it has become here in our area. And I'm receiving hundreds of calls every day wondering, what do I do? What do I do? And like we're telling everyone, do not file a claim. The Department of Justice is not ready to receive any claims. And you need to be tested. You need to be qualified in order to file. It's 3 strikes and you're out. And the reason why I did start this, the Southwest Coalition, is because there was so much confusion. Many of these attorneys were filing claims for our post-71 minors when there was nothing available to them. So like I said, 3 strikes, you're out. If you file 3 times and you get denied, you cannot refile. So we need to warn our people. We need to tell them, be careful with what people are saying. This is unbelievable. It's terrible that this is happening.
All right. Thank you, Loretta, for all this timely information. Let's go back to the phones. We have another caller on the line. This is Mateo, who is in northern New Mexico, in Chimayo, also listening on KUNM radio. Hello, Mateo.
Yes, good morning. Thanks for taking my call. I was calling, first of all, thank you so much for all your hard work. I worked back in the late 80s and 90s on nuclear issues, and so appreciative of everything that you're sharing and all the hard work that you've done. I have a very dear friend who worked in the mines, and his daughter was born with severe health issues, and we were talking the other day whether he might be able to file a claim, and then your program came on while I was driving from the job site, and I was so grateful. Is that anything that is there any compensation for folks like that? And then also how would we reach you all through the website or something?
All right, Tina or Loretta, which of you would like to respond to Mateo and his question?
Well, I would like to respond quickly. Sure. First of all, Mateo, thank you so much for calling in, because one of the things I want to make sure everybody is clear on is that the downwinder issue is not an issue that only pertains to the people who lived in the vicinity of Trinity. We know, because a Princeton scientist in the last 5 years has been working to recreate that blast using today's technology and using historical weather data, that the entire state of New Mexico was horribly irradiated from Trinity, along with 45 other states, Canada, and Mexico. So the Trinity bomb completely irradiated our entire state, and the downwinder status applies to the entire state of New Mexico. In answer to Mateo's specific question about this uranium worker's daughter, it's going to depend on what year she was born and whether she lived in New Mexico between 44 and 62, and also whether she has a compensable cancer. So the answer is maybe. And to get more information, people can go to our website that we update regularly, and it's trinitydownwinders.com. trinitydownwinders.com, not to be confused with one of those scam websites that's just downwinders.com. So many people are going to that website, and it immediately says, do you qualify for RECA? And then it takes you into a claims process. And we've been telling everybody, please don't be confused. So hopefully in answer to Mateo's question, this young woman hopefully was born, during that time frame. Many more people, by the way, Sean, are going to qualify as downwinders than will qualify as uranium workers, because those people who worked in the uranium mining industry is a narrower group of people than those people who lived in New Mexico during the atomic testing.
Okay.
And we know that cutoff at 1962 is absolutely not adequate, because these bombs produce radioactive isotopes that have very long half-lives. In the case of Trinity, they used plutonium, and it has a half-life of 24,000 years. It's going to be in our environment forever. And so we know that we're going to have to continue to fight for healthcare coverage and a further extension and expansion of the program to incorporate people who were born well into the 90s and maybe even the year 2000 and beyond.
Tina, all of this information with regard to the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act, very timely, very helpful. It's generating calls. But I also want to ask you about the legacy of Hiroshima, of Nagasaki, of the Trinity test 80 years ago. What lessons have we learned looking back?
Well, I say regularly, at this 80 years later, we should be able to look at all of this through a different lens. It took 80 years for our government to recognize the people of New Mexico who became the collateral damage of the Trinity test. They never warned us before or afterwards. They never came back to assess the damage. They never have taken care of us. They're just now offering us $100,000, which is nothing in the big scheme of things if you're sick, right? We should be able to take a look at the fact that they bombed American citizens, the people of New Mexico, when they detonated the bomb at Trinity. We should be able to look at the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki through a different lens today, 80 years later, and we should realize that these sorts of weapons are so incredibly destructive, much more so today than they were 80 years ago. And we can never accept the use of those weapons again. We're in the middle of a nuclear arms race. Our state is a government-occupied state. They're building plutonium pits in Los Alamos. We're finding the highest levels of plutonium any place in the world in the canyons around Los Alamos. We can no longer accept the status quo, and we should be challenging that, all of us, in unity every day. Because we are the legacy. We are the legacy, and the people of New Mexico are intrinsically linked to the people of Japan, especially the people of Nagasaki, because the bomb at Nagasaki was a replica of Trinity. It just wasn't as powerful as the Trinity bomb. And so, I always say it's unfortunate that our government went down this path. It's been horribly unfortunate for the people of New Mexico, because the only thing that's happened for us is that we've sacrificed and we've suffered for 80 years and we've died, and we bury our loved ones on a regular basis, and then someone else is diagnosed.
All right. Thank you, Tina. Loretta, back to you. I want to ask you about the impact of the land there at Laguna Pueblo. We've heard about the health issues and how it's impacting families and individuals, but how's it impacting the land?
I would like to answer Mateo's question, or talk about this. Many of our people here in Laguna were exposed to radiation, not only the uranium miners, family members. The women washed the miners' clothes with the other family clothes. The children ate the out of the lunch boxes, the leftovers. Many of our people here are sick, suffering, and dying. And it's just not the uranium miners. It's the children. Right now, our people our young people are getting sick. They're dying of cancer. I get calls every day of family members sick. What do we do? What can they do? My wife has been diagnosed with pulmonary fibrosis. My children that were born after 62 are very sick. There's nothing available for them. My fight, and I promised the village officers in Powati, because we have the open pit mine still. It has not been cleaned up. It's in the top number 1 cleanup, number 2 cleanup, and it's contaminated. The water, the land, the air is contaminated. Mesita Dam is contaminated. It's flowing down the Rio San Jose, and there's nothing they can do to stop this. And so this is disheartening, because it's not only the uranium miners, it's our people that are sick, our loved ones, our children, and this is it's continuing, and it's getting worse. And my fight is that when we do amend this, that they include the families that live near a contaminated uranium mine, because there needs to be some kind of compensation for them.
All right. We're going to take another break, and we'll continue our conversation, and we're going to talk with Marissa Naranjo, who is an environmental board member for Honor Our Pueblo Existence. It's also called HOPE, and we'll get more perspectives, and these will be coming from Marissa in northern New Mexico, Santa Clara Pueblo. And of course, the phone lines are still open. Let's get some more calls going. Any of you folks who are familiar with some of these testing sites or some of these mining locations, give us a call, 1-800-996-2848. 1-800-996-2848. What are you waiting for? Pick up that phone and call.
Jangachit Bichiriagaput Bini Kaput Junach Kaknaslomtku Kanslhut Kachpunik Kakputen Igaicht Kachpunik Biniutemtnun Kanslhut Ki Musvik Bnichalra Bakshuku healthcare.gov/coverage Kwashukaya Goglagu 1-800-318-2596 Una Kingun Khtukhagan, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services.
You're tuned in to Native America Calling. We are talking about the long-lasting effects of nuclear weapons and energy on native lands and in native communities. You can join this conversation with your comments and questions by calling 1-800-996-2848. 1-800-996-2848. Let's now talk with Marissa Naranjo, who joins us from the Santa Clara Pueblo in northern New Mexico. She is an environmental representative board member for Honor Our Pueblo Existence and also the deputy director of Sovereign Energy. She is Santa Clara Pueblo. And Marissa, hello again, and thank you for joining the show. Lots to unpack here, and I want to talk about Los Alamos National Laboratory with you because it had a major role in atomic bomb creation and testing. It's located there on ancestral Pueblo territory in northern New Mexico. How did these events at Los Alamos impact the land and the Pueblo communities in the region?
Thank you, Sean. I just want to preface this by saying, as Pueblo people, we're taught to pray not just for our own communities, but for the entire world, our relatives near and far, including all those that are continuing to experience the distress of the nuclear weapons complex. Also want to thank our Pueblos, our tribes, and tribal organizations for always doing all they can, both at the government-to-government level and through community-based action to protect the health of our lands, people, and culture. So I think it's important to start with, because of our histories and deep relationship to these lands, many of our tribes and Pueblos recognize the entire state of New Mexico as a traditional cultural property or traditional homeland and sacred landscape. Over the last 82 years, many of these areas within New Mexico we know have become sites for federal nuclear weapons development activity. And again, thank you to Tina and Loretta for talking about their work and about those compensations that are being offered as part of that long legacy of contamination and public health risks. But when the region now encompassed by LANL and the city of Los Alamos was seized by the federal government for the Manhattan Project in 1943, Pueblo people were denied access to areas of traditional and cultural importance, many of which were damaged or destroyed during the decades of LANL's confidential nuclear weapons development process. Moreover, our Pueblo and tribal communities that live downriver, downstream, and downwind from the laboratory now continue to assess those cultural resource impacts, those sacred site impacts, continue to assess ecological contamination and address, a lot of the rampant health disparities resulting from LANO's plutonium economy and nuclear weapons testing.
Lots of information, Marissa. Let's talk about the tests specifically. I understand there were smaller explosive tests that took place in and around Los Alamos. Are there lasting impacts from those events?
Yes, definitely. I think it's important to mention, especially even in today's political climate, where tribes across Indian country are forced to navigate unpredictable federal budgets and shifting policy priorities, our Pueblos and tribes still continue to invest significant capacity and their limited resources into engaging in federal consultation processes on LANO and energy issues, and those are, those from the lasting impacts of the weapons testing, of the weapons production, weapons development. Yet these efforts remain chronically underfunded. According to DOE Office of Indian Energy's 2024 budget, less than 1% of the DOE's total budget is allocated to tribal programs, despite the fact that many DOE facilities, including LANO, are located on or near tribal lands. Meanwhile, LANO received about $4.6 billion last year for weapons activities alone, while Pueblo and tribal communities are still fighting for those basic cleanup, health protections, and meaningful consultation. So at the same time that tribes are trying to address historic contamination issues, LANO continues to push forward new projects that pose serious threats to, our public health, our sacred sites, and the natural environment that we depend on. And happy to talk about some of those projects if you'd like.
Yeah, please do. Tell us about some of these new projects and what the potential risks might be.
Sure. So there are 5 major projects happening right now that, are on tribes' radars and on tribal organizations that support tribes' radars. The first is the LANO proposed electrical power capacity upgrade project, which many folks may have heard on the news. It's very locally controversial. This is LANO's proposal to build a 14-mile transmission line through the heart of the Caja del Rio, which is a traditional cultural landscape sacred to many Pueblos and tribes. They're very near greenlighting this project despite many tribes, local governments, local communities, members of the New Mexico congressional delegation, environmental and community organizations, and many others all voicing the need to protect the Caja del Rio and all of the sacred and environmental historic resources that it holds. Another example is LANO's proposal to vent radioactive tritium into the atmosphere. Tritium is a byproduct of nuclear weapons research, development, and production. LANO's proposal is to vent up to 30,000 curies of tritium, and that is roughly 100 times the EPA's annual limit for tritium exposure in drinking water. And because it's water soluble, once released, it can disperse widely through the air, through the soil, both surface and groundwater. It can be taken up through inhalation, ingestion, or skin absorption. And these pathways we know create elevated health risks, especially considering that the federal safety standards for radiation are still based on something called reference man, which is a model of a healthy young white male who lives a Western lifestyle and eats grocery store food. But of course, that doesn't reflect the reality of our Pueblo and land-based communities where women, children, elders, pregnant folks are often more vulnerable to radiation exposure through air, water, soil, and traditional food sources. So that is the second one. A third one is the LANO plutonium pit programmatic environmental impact statement, which Tina mentioned earlier. This is to assess the environmental impacts of expanding production of plutonium pits, which are the triggers for nuclear weapons. DOE plans to produce at least 80 pits per year, with LANO expected to make 30 per year, which is about a 500% increase over its current capacity.
Okay. Marissa, I want to ask you quickly, just, for the sake of argument, potential benefits of these projects. Can you talk about how those could potentially have economic benefits or technological benefits? I understand there are risks here, but we want to also discuss the other side a little bit.
Yeah, I think that is, a lot of the narrative that is provided to our tribal communities, to the public, by LANL and DOE about the economic benefits. And it is, quite a sensitive subject for our local communities here because there are a lot of socioeconomic considerations for the labs, local job generation, and things like that. And so, at the same time, though, there are also other considerations to think about in terms of, who are those jobs going to? What are the worker safety protections, especially for a lot of our families and community members or relatives that are working up at the labs? We want to make sure that they are given, equitable opportunity, but also protected and made sure that their safety is taken into consideration also.
All right. And Marissa, what are your thoughts on Hiroshima and Nagasaki 80 years ago? What should we have learned? What are the lessons?
I think in terms of the, lessons, as we remember Hiroshima, it's important to also recognize that the nuclear weapons development and nuclear colonialism that really fuels it is not a thing of the past. It remains an ongoing project. Again, promoted under the historic narratives of national security, of scientific and economic advancement. But ask any of our tribal communities and tribal community members, anybody that has been impacted, that it has been effectively and increasingly carried out at the expense of the health of our local communities, our lands, our cultures, and sacred sites. And so I think it's important for everybody, on the anniversary of today to really reflect on the narrative of national security and why it should necessarily include clean drinking water, healthy ecosystems, and the ability of our tribes to govern and protect our people. So we need a new definition of that, and one that centers our public health, our environmental protection, and indigenous sovereignty at its core, really.
All right. Thank you, Marissa. And Loretta, I want to circle back to you now. And obviously, this new compensation expansion through RECA is a big deal, and it could potentially benefit a lot of folks. But what is other work that you and your partners are looking to embark on to make lives better for people there at Laguna Pueblo and elsewhere, and not just their lives, but also the land that they live on?
Well, that is one of the questions that we have been discussing, our steering committee. What do we do next? Right now, we're trying to help all our people, to get tested, to direct them in the right direction. That's been our main focus. But like I said, our main goal is currently now is to have our people that live close to the uranium mines that are still contaminated to also receive compensation. And we need cleanup. They need to clean Jack Powell mines. It's a big hole, it's contaminated, and it's dangerous. Our people from Pewate, from Guishti, they live within a quarter of a mile from it. And the cliff nearby is a hot spot. We went there last week. We took a group of people last week, and we were so disheartened because how close it was, the smell, the toxin. You can smell it when you drive up toward Pewate, and every time I go up there, I cry because I think, my goodness, our people are breathing this stuff. And we have so many of them up in Pewate that are sick. And there's no direction for them right now, and we feel so abandoned by our government. And that shouldn't be.
Right.
I'm
And Loretta,
so
what concerns me also as a fellow Laguna Pueblo tribal member is that every few years there's discussion about reopening the mine. It comes up every now and then.
Well, they better not. We will fight. We will fight. We think it can't happen. It cannot happen because, our people are suffering. My goodness. Why hasn't the government learned that this is not good for people. This is not good for anyone. Mining, testing is not good for anyone.
All right. Let's take a caller. We have time for one more. This is Tabor, who is also in Albuquerque, New Mexico, listening on KUNM radio. Hello, Tabor. You're on the air.
Yes, hello. Tabor is my name. I'll be brief. I was thinking what I was going to say on this. I worked in the nuclear industry at University of New Mexico, and then also I had clearance and was classified to go out on Kirtland Air Force Base and also Sandia National Labs, as well as the Office of Medical Investigators. And one story I'd like to share with you is that at the Office of Medical Investigators, I was called in. They had found a corpse in a uranium tailings pond on the Navajo Nation. Before they could do the autopsy, I had to give them clearance. And so I went back and I did all my tests, and I called them, and they said, he's not hot. He's not hot. And so they continued. I never followed up. I just did my job. But I regret working in the industry. I have to tell you that. I sent, low-level radioactive waste to the WIP site and also up to Hanford and Richland, Washington. My signatures are on that. And, truly I do regret it. But that's all there is to it. I mean, I don't really reach out and say too much, especially on a radio. But so I don't know if that makes any sense, but I just thought I'd reach out.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, Tabor, and I'm glad you reached out to us today, and I'm glad you shared your story and your insights here on our show. Really appreciate you calling. And Tina, we're winding down and listening to our callers, listening to the other guests. I'm curious to know, do you think the general public is more knowledgeable now about this history we're talking about today, and specifically what it's meant to the health of people in New Mexico, or is there still just a whole lot more work to do?
Well, there's always work to do, but what I can tell you is when I started doing this 20 years ago, nobody believed it, nobody wanted to hear about it, and now I'm interviewed by journalists from all over the world on a regular basis. We are spreading the word, and it's necessary. It's absolutely necessary, primarily because some of the things Marissa said, all the plans going on at Los Alamos. And, I want to respond real quickly to a couple things. If the government wants to come back and resume uranium mining, doesn't everybody think they should clean up the mess they made the first time around? They always tell us it's economic development, but I've talked to enough uranium workers to know that if they'd known back then what they know now, they would have never taken the job. And I always say no job is better than a filthy job. And secondly, in response to Tabor, let me just say the nuclear workers have an amazing program that takes care of them when they're made sick because of the work that they've done. And they have the benefit of their education, choosing to work in the industry, being paid to work in the industry, the benefit of safety training, safety gear, and almost always a dosimeter, all things that uranium workers didn't have, that downwinders didn't have, that we still don't have. And I respect Tabor for coming forward in the way that he did with regret, because we have been innocent victims. We have been collateral damage. And I would just like to say, I want people to become more educated. I want us to stand in unity, as I said before, against the things that are happening all around us. We can no longer let Los Alamos do their work unchecked. We can no longer accept this as the status quo. This is our state. They invaded our lands and our lives.
All right, Tina, I'm sorry we're out of time. We're going to have to wrap up this conversation, but thank you to the three guests who joined us today, Tina Cordova, Marissa Naranjo, and also Loretta Anderson, and the callers who joined the conversation as well. Thank you, folks, for picking up your phones. Please also join us again tomorrow for a conversation about what President Trump's push for more patriotic school curricula could mean for Native education. Until then, I'm your host, Sean Spruce. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Support comes from AirTalk Wireless, where individuals who qualify for the Tribal Lifeline program receive an iPhone or Samsung device, unlimited data, calls and texts, and international calling. Learn more at airtalkwireless.com/NAC. Minutes from downtown Anchorage, the Alaska Native Heritage Center is more than a museum. It's where Alaska Native traditions, languages, and arts come alive. There's always something new at the Alaska Native Heritage Center who support this show. More at alaskanative.net.
My precious relatives, map out your journey to mental wellness. Our culture is a source of strength as we navigate uncertainty. Need to talk with someone who can help tap into that strength? Contact your local Indian healthcare provider. Visit healthcare.gov/coverage or call 1-800-318-2596. A message from the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services.
Native America Calling is produced in the Annenberg National Native Voice Studios in Albuquerque, New Mexico by Koahnic Broadcast Corporation, a Native nonprofit media organization. Funding is provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting with support from the Public Radio Satellite Service. Music is by Brent Michael Davids. Native Voice One, the Native American Radio Network.